The galaxy tuned in. Every screen across 1,000 worlds shimmered with the crest of the KLYRR Dominion, an emblem of obsidian wings wrapped around a dying star. The grand hall of execution was bathed in blinding white light, reflecting off chrome pillars and the scaled armor of the alien aristocracy. Rows of nobles from dozens of species filled the amphitheater, chittering and murmuring in anticipation. Cameras hovered in the air like metal insects. The event had been advertised for cycles. Justice for the Galactic War. Live. At the center of the platform stood 7 human women, bound, bloodied, yet upright. Soldiers once. Prisoners now. A medic, a linguist, 2 engineers, a teacher, a pilot, and a civilian volunteer. They wore no armor, no insignia, only the tattered remains of their Terran uniforms, smudged with soot and defiance. The Emperor rose from his throne, robes glittering with jewels mined from conquered moons. His voice echoed through every world's network. "Citizens of the Dominion," he began, his tone syrupy with pride. "Today we display mercy by ending the human disease swiftly." Laughter rippled across the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on the women's faces. None spoke. One, a young medic with ash-blonde hair, lifted her chin as though she could stare through the screen into every laughing alien's soul. The Emperor noticed her gaze and smiled.
"See?
They pretend courage. How quaint." Billions watched. Children on distant planets clapped. News anchors called it a symbol of galactic unity. Even the Emperor's advisors smirked. But somewhere, beyond those billions of amused faces, the silent human colonies watched too. No protests. No outrage. No transmission. Just silence. The executions were brutal and efficient. Plasma spears. 7 bursts of white light. 7 bodies fell. The Emperor turned to the camera and raised a clawed hand. "Let this stand as warning. Earth's kind cannot comprehend civility. Let their extinction begin with honor." The broadcast cut to applause and fanfare music. Analysts from alien networks debated the ethics for entertainment. A pundit laughed. "Perhaps now Earthlings will learn their place." Another chimed in. "Assuming they have the courage left to watch." But humanity watched everything. Far across the void, in a quiet room aboard the Terran diplomatic vessel Halcyon Dawn, Commander Elias Reed turned off the broadcast. He sat in the dark, the only light coming from the faint blue glow of a teacup warmer. His posture was immaculate, navy uniform pressed, shoes polished, expression unreadable. On the wall behind him hung a single photograph, a smiling group of 7 women in field uniforms. Reed poured himself a fresh cup of tea. The steam curled upward like a ghost. 7 souls, he murmured softly. 7 flags. He stirred the tea once, twice, then set the spoon down with clinical precision. A younger officer entered, pale and trembling. "Sir, Earth Command requests response authorization. The galaxy's watching. They expect." Reed lifted a finger. The man froze mid-sentence. "They expect outrage," Reed said quietly. "Noise, fury, threats. That's what they do." He took a slow sip, eyes distant. "But humanity doesn't scream when it bleeds. We plan." The young officer hesitated. "Should we release a statement?" Reed's smile was faint, almost kind. "Oh, we will. But not today." In the alien capital of Thrall Prime, the Emperor celebrated. Banquets overflowed with steaming platters and luminescent wines. Dancers performed reenactments of humanity's defeat. Holodrones circled him, capturing every angle for the post-broadcast replay. One of his advisors, an aged, amphibian scholar, leaned closer. "My Emperor, forgive me, but there are whispers. The humans have not." "Whispers are for cowards," the Emperor interrupted. "Earth is a dying ember. We have snuffed it out." Yet, far below the palace, in the maintenance tunnels of Thrall Prime, static hummed faintly through the city's data grid. A flicker. A pulse. Something moving across the network, invisible, tracing each data node. A whisper encoded in human binary, a signal buried deep within the transmission's echo. On distant worlds, small anomalies appeared, lights flickering aboard alien spaceports, encrypted messages appearing in civilian inboxes, each one identical. We remember. Most dismissed them as pranks. Some as malware. But on the third repetition, even the laughter stopped. The phrase appeared on embassy walls, military consoles, even digital menus in restaurants. We remember. At a Galactic news studio, 2 alien anchors tried to spin the story. Primitive humans are emotional creatures. Likely some digital rebellion from survivors. Their producer's screen suddenly went black. Then white letters appeared. We remember the 7. And beneath it, coordinates. The producer gulped. Are those human space coordinates? The feed cut out. Hours later, across the Milky Arch sector, automated Terran cargo drones, long presumed destroyed, activated. They altered course without command. Thousands of them. Their engines burned silently in unison, like candles being lit in the dark. The alien fleet stationed nearby didn't react at first. Cargo drones posed no threat. But when the drones began transmitting synchronized pings, the pattern formed a symbol. The ancient Terran flag, 7 stars encircling Earth's sun. Back aboard Halcyon Dawn, Reed stood before the wide viewport, hands behind his back. The officer from before approached nervously. Sir, the Council's demanding a statement again. They say silence looks like surrender. Reed didn't turn. Surrender? His reflection in the glass looked almost amused. No. This is the sound of us remembering who we are. The officer swallowed hard. What do we do next, Commander? Reed glanced at the photo of the 7 women. For the first time, his mask of civility cracked just slightly. Enough for grief, enough for fury. Then it hardened into something colder. We give them what they asked for, he said. A lesson in civility. He raised his wrist communicator. Fleet command. Begin readiness cycle. Which protocol, sir? Reed's voice softened, like a man ordering breakfast. Hestia. The communicator crackled, then a whisper. Copy that. Protocol Hestia confirmed. Moments later, across Sol System, Earth's orbital satellites turned their sensors away from the sun and pointed outward. Lunar bases went dark. Civilian chatter fell silent. The entire network shifted frequencies to military bandwidth. Back on Thrall Prime, the Emperor prepared for another broadcast, an encore to his victory. Make sure the humans see this one, he told his technicians. They should know their extinction is complete. But when the feed went live, every galactic viewer saw not the Emperor's smiling face, but a single Terran insignia filling the screen. A silver phoenix rising from flame, surrounded by 7 faint stars. And then, in calm English, a human voice spoke through every channel, every frequency, every translation system. It was Elias Reed. To the Galactic Dominion, he said gently. Thank you for your broadcast. We received it, clearly. A pause. The silence stretched across worlds. Now, please stand by for our reply. The signal cut. In the Emperor's chamber, the lights flickered once. Then every console on his warship displayed the same phrase that had haunted the galaxy for hours. We remember. The Emperor exhaled slowly. So, he muttered, gripping his scepter. The vermin have teeth. Somewhere beyond the stars, 1,000 Terran engines roared to life. The galaxy had just heard humanity go quiet. And silence, everyone would soon learn, was the sound of war. The Galactic Council convened under the glass spires of Valor Prime, a city that glittered like a chandelier against the void. Inside the council hall, thousands of delegates from across the stars murmured in uneasy chorus. Reports of human activity, strange signals, vanished cargo fleets, silent planets, had unsettled even the arrogant. Yet the official record showed no open human response. No retaliation. Just the phrase that haunted every channel. We remember. The Emperor arrived draped in gold and venom, his every step echoing on the polished obsidian floor. His entourage of advisors whispered assurances. The humans were primitive, reactionary, weak. His laughter, sharp as a blade, filled the chamber. They threaten in riddles because they lack armies, he boasted. They'll send words where we send fire. At the far end of the hall, a single human flag hung, small, unadorned, a courtesy gesture. Before it stood one man. Commander Elias Reed. His uniform was pressed with military precision, his boots spotless. No weapons, no entourage. Just calm eyes and a thermos of tea he poured without hurry, as if the galaxy weren't watching. Representative Reed of the Terran Accord. The KLYR Emperor announced mockingly. We appreciate your attendance. Reed smiled faintly, as though greeting a neighbor rather than a warlord. Wouldn't miss it, Your Majesty. I do appreciate the hospitality. The tea on this planet's a bit metallic, though. Uneasy laughter rippled through the hall. The insectoid delegate from the Cryi blinked nervously. Commander Reed, the galaxy requests clarity. Will Earth pursue vengeance? Reed tilted his head. Vengeance? No. That's such an ugly word. We're simply here to discuss compensation. 1,000 alien ears perked. The Emperor's grin widened. Compensation? You humans amuse me. You arrive without armies, demand reparation from an empire that spans 500 worlds. Reed set his teacup down with surgical precision. 7 families, to be exact. 7 names. We don't need armies to remember them. The Emperor laughed, a booming sound that vibrated the air. You expect apology? I expect a broadcast, Reed said softly. Your voice. Across every channel. A statement that the executions were an error of arrogance. We'll consider that, settlement. The laughter died. The council grew still. Even the drones recording the meeting seemed to hover quieter. The Emperor leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You presume too much. Reed shrugged gently. We tend to do that. It's a side effect of survival. The reptilian vexor delegate hissed. And if we refuse? Reed smiled. Kind, measured, almost warm. Then I assume the Emperor has declared personal war on the human species. Silence thickened. The delegates exchanged glances, uncertain if they'd heard correctly. The insectoid ambassador clicked nervously. Personal war? You cannot. Reed interrupted, still polite. Oh, we can. Humanity doesn't wage wars collectively anymore. Too bureaucratic. These days, we make them personal. He leaned slightly forward, voice quiet but edged. And we're very good at making things personal. The Emperor rose, towering, robe swirling. Your threats are childish. Reed's gaze didn't waver. Not a threat. A courtesy notice. Earth runs on schedules. The amphibian scholar who'd once warned the Emperor whispered. Perhaps we should listen. But the Emperor waved him off, eyes glinting. Enough theater. Guards, remove this diplomat. Humans have overstayed their welcome. Reed didn't move. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and placed a small black cube on the polished table. Before I go, a gift. A token of remembrance. The guards advanced. The cube blinked once, harmless, inert. Reed stood, gathering his thermos and cap with tranquil ease. You have 72 hours to respond, he said. No need to rush. Take your time. We're patient when we care. He gave a shallow nod, then turned and walked away. Not hurried, not tense, just calm, like a man leaving a cafe after paying the bill. The Emperor sneered. 72 hours until what, little ape? Reed paused at the massive door, looking over his shoulder. Until someone checks under your throne. He left. The guards surrounded the cube. Imperial technicians scanned it. No explosives, no energy readings, nothing. They laughed. Primitive intimidation. The Emperor scoffed and ordered it destroyed. They didn't notice the microsecond pulse the cube emitted before vaporizing. Hours later, every moon orbiting Thrall Prime flickered out of communication. Satellites crashed, navigation grids failed, and half the Emperor's personal fleet lost orbit synchronization. Analysts called it cosmic coincidence. The Emperor blamed sabotage, but his commanders reported no intrusions. No explosions. Just absence. In the meantime, news networks replayed Reed's calm demeanor. Alien commentators mocked it. Asterisk, humans bluff because they lack firepower. Asterisk, a merchant from the Aryun species chuckled. They hide behind smiles. Always so polite before they break. Somewhere in deep space, humanity smiled back. On the diplomatic cruiser Halcyon Dawn, Reed watched the council replay on loop. He poured another cup of tea, and listened to the alien pundits ridicule him. "They think we're harmless," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Morrow. Reed nodded slightly. "That's the idea." Fear screams. Strategy whispers. Morrow hesitated, voice low. Was the cube really empty? Reed chuckled softly. "Depends on your definition of empty." He gestured to the window where distant stars shimmered faintly. Sometimes a hole is the most dangerous weapon. It makes people fill it with their own fear. He sipped again, eyes unfocused. "They'll talk for 72 hours. Then we'll move." Back on Valor Prime, panic crept through the council. The Vexor delegate demanded increased security. The amphibian scholar requested a private audience with the Emperor, denied. Rumors spread. Whole colonies reporting untraceable human signals, ships vanishing from radar without light or heat signatures. The Emperor dismissed it all. "Glitches," he barked. "Nothing more." But deep beneath the council's central data vault, security cameras captured shadows moving in maintenance tunnels, shadows that shouldn't exist in vacuum. A technician found a symbol carved into a control panel. 7 stars encircling a phoenix. The image was traced back to ancient Terran war emblems. When the technician reported it, the system crashed. At the 70-hour mark, a galactic trade convoy traveling near the border of human space transmitted a distress signal. "Unknown vessels approaching. Unarmed, civilian class. Request clearance." Then silence. The convoy's escorts arrived minutes later to find only drifting metal fragments. No heat. No debris pattern consistent with weapons fire. Just clean precision, like surgery. The council convened again in panic. The Emperor shouted for his admirals. The amphibian scholar whispered, "You should have apologized." The Emperor slammed his fist on the console. "How are you transmitting here?" Reed smiled. "Oh, you opened the door. We just stepped through." The image glitched, distorting into a repeating phrase scrolling across every display in the chamber. Asterisk 72 hours. The Emperor roared, "To vermin." A nearby holoscreen flickered to life without command. It showed Reed's calm face. He was still in his uniform, still polite, holding a cup of tea. "Your Majesty," he said pleasantly. "I trust your day's been productive. Just checking in on that apology. I do admire punctuality." A nearby holoscreen flickered to life without command. It showed Reed's calm face. He was still in his uniform, still polite, holding a cup of tea. "Your Majesty," he said pleasantly. "I trust your day's been productive. Just checking in on that apology. I do admire punctuality." The Emperor slammed his fist on the console. "How are you transmitting here?" Reed smiled. "Oh, you opened the door. We just stepped through." The image glitched, distorting into a repeating phrase scrolling across every display in the chamber. 72 hours. We remember. The Emperor's throat tightened. "Cut the feed." But the feed didn't cut. The phrase kept echoing in every dialect. Reed's voice, calm and quiet, lingered through the distortion. "You called it a lesson in civility, Your Majesty. Let's make it mutual." The screen went black. In the hall, the Emperor stared into the dark glass, his reflection trembling. Outside, thunder rolled through space as invisible engines ignited far beyond Valor Prime's orbit. 7 distant signals blinked to life, each one marking a human fleet emerging from silence. And somewhere, on 1,000 alien worlds, the phrase, "We remember," began pulsing in time with their heartbeats. For 72 hours, the galaxy waited. Not for peace. Peace had died with 7 human women, but for the noise that usually followed war. Yet Earth remained silent. No threats, no broadcasts, no demands. Just an unnerving quiet that seemed to stretch through every star system like a held breath. The Emperor's advisors filled the silence with theories. They are fractured, hissed one. Their networks collapsed. Another croaked. Perhaps they fear us at last. The emperor himself began to believe it. He laughed during banquets, raised toasts to the pacified primates, and ordered fresh propaganda to mock humanity's restraint. But the laughter sounded forced now, brittle around the edges. Outside his window, Thrall Prime glowed with artificial daylight. The skies swarmed with his warships, shields shimmering blue, engines humming in formation. Yet even with his fleets arrayed above him, the emperor couldn't sleep. He found himself listening, to the spaces between the sounds, to the static in the air, to the almost human whisper that sometimes came through his palace intercom. On the 71st hour, the council's astronomers sent an urgent report. "Earth is gone," one stammered. "Transmission blackout across every Terran colony. No light emissions, no comm signals, no trade beacons. As if their worlds vanished." The emperor sneered. "Impossible. A species can't erase itself." The old amphibian scholar who had warned him before trembled. "Perhaps they didn't erase themselves, Majesty. Perhaps they're hiding." The emperor slammed his staff down. "Cowards hide. Soldiers die." But even as he spoke, reports streamed in from across the sectors. Freighters disappearing from convoy routes, satellites losing contact with Terran outposts, drones discovering abandoned listening stations broadcasting only two words: "We remember." Meanwhile, far beyond the Dominion's borders, inside a steel-gray command center buried within the asteroid Vesta, Commander Elias Reed stood over a holodeble glowing with 1,000 red dots, every ship, every satellite, every life that had ever mocked humanity. His face was calm, but his eyes carried exhaustion beneath the precision. "Status?" he asked quietly. 72 hours complete, sir," replied Lieutenant Morrow. "Our fleets are in position across 4 quadrants. Civilian channels remain locked." "Good," Reed murmured. "Let the galaxy think we vanished. It's time they learn how silence moves." He studied the holographic display. Each Terran fleet sat cloaked within nebulae and asteroid fields, their identifiers masked under civilian designations: Cargo Convoy 6A, Refugee Relief 92, Diplomatic Courier Orion. Only when Reed whispered the phrase, "Phoenix Protocol," did their signatures twist, revealing warships beneath. The Mercy, Kansas, Teacher's Wrath, Liberty's Oath, Seraphim, Yorktown, and Hestia. 7 ships for 7 women. Morrow swallowed hard. "They'll call this genocide, sir." Reed's voice softened. "No. They'll call it memory." Elsewhere, alien broadcast networks churned with noise. Memes of frightened humans circulated again, old footage edited for mockery. "They hide in caves," said one commentator. "They've surrendered before fighting." Another sneered. "The apes discovered humility at last." But inside those same networks, deep in the data veins, something stirred. A fragment of human code, disguised as harmless advertisements and static filler, spread unnoticed. Each packet of data carried a single instruction: listen. On the 72nd hour exactly, the code activated. Every galactic screen flickered once. Then again. And then every broadcast froze, not with an explosion or declaration, but with an image: 7 faces. The executed women, still and calm, projected in full color across the galaxy. Then a voice followed, clear and courteous. "Good evening, citizens of the Dominion. This is Commander Elias Reed, United Terran Accord." Billions of aliens froze mid-breath. Reed's voice carried no anger. Only the smooth rhythm of a man delivering a polite memo. 72 hours ago, you murdered 7 of ours. We took some time to reflect. Now, in the spirit of fairness, you'll reflect too." The broadcast cut to star charts filled with flickering points of light. They looked random at first, until the pattern formed the shape of Earth's sun surrounded by 7 orbiting worlds. Reed's voice continued. "Every coordinate you see marks a Dominion outpost where human captives died. You'll find the outposts gone now. We removed them, surgically. No survivors. No collateral." A collective gasp rippled through alien cities. The Emperor's court erupted in chaos. He shouted, "Cut the transmission." But every console refused input. The voice persisted, calm and dreadful. "This isn't war," Reed said. "This is closure." Across the galaxy, alien fleets scrambled to trace the signal's origin. It came from everywhere and nowhere, reflected off satellites, broadcast through civilian relays, even through holographic advertisements. Every attempt to jam it failed. On Valor Prime, the Emperor's generals rushed in. "Your Majesty, our border outposts have gone dark." "How many?" The general hesitated. "All 7 sectors." The Emperor's golden eyes widened. 7. As panic spread, a curious thing happened among ordinary aliens. Some began to whisper prayers, for the first time, to humans. Others shut their shops, fearing retaliation. A poet on Trelease 9 wrote, "When humanity is quiet, the stars themselves listen." Back on Vesta Base, Reed stood motionless before the holoscreen as incoming data confirmed. All 7 targeted systems erased, cleanly and without radiation traces. He didn't smile. He simply breathed out. Morrow's hands shook. "You just wiped 7 worlds, sir." Reed turned his gaze toward the stars beyond the viewport. "No," he said softly. "We buried them." He closed the holographic map, the display dimming to a single word. "Hestia, active." "Bring the fleets into formation," Reed ordered. "Phase 2 begins at dawn Galactic Standard." "Phase 2?" Morrow whispered. "What's left to destroy?" Reed looked down at the old photograph pinned beside the console. 7 smiling women standing in red dust under an alien sun. His eyes lingered on the medic, the one with ash-blonde hair. "Their laughter," he said quietly. "We'll erase the sound of it from their killer's memory." Back on Thrall Prime, the Emperor stood at his balcony, watching the night. The artificial lights of his city shimmered beautifully, until they began to blink. One by one, the towers went dark, replaced by faint blue beacons forming a circle around the palace. A transmission flared on his private comms. It wasn't Reed this time, it was one of his own admirals, face pale and trembling. "Your Majesty," he whispered. "Our ships, they're firing on us. They're not responding to command." The Emperor's mouth went dry. "Explain yourself." "They've been reprogrammed. By human code." "We think." Static swallowed his words. In the distance, the Emperor saw his own fleet turning in slow formation toward the planet. Thousands of ships. Weapons primed. He stumbled backward. No, they can't." But the comm channels filled with a single phrase, repeated in calm, multilingual voices. Male, female, human. "We remember." And then silence. No thunder. No explosions. Just stillness so complete it felt like morning. Reed watched from the command bridge, the light of Thrall Prime flickering across his eyes. He whispered, "It's done." Morrow turned to him. "Will they stop now, sir?" "The Dominion." Reed's answer was quiet but sure. "They'll try to talk next. They'll beg for negotiation. And then..." He lifted his gaze, the reflection of the burning world gleaming like a sunrise in his pupils. "We'll teach them what humanity sounds like when it finally speaks." The throne room of Thrall Prime burned with the color of stormlight, violet lightning rolling through the cloud cover as if the sky itself rejected its emperor. The walls trembled with reports streaming in from every direction. Fleets collapsing, colonies severed, allies gone silent. The imperial banners hung heavy in the air, their golden edges scorched by static discharge. But the emperor stood tall, defiant, his reflection flickering in the glass of the control dais. From the edge of the chamber, his vizier approached slowly. "Majesty," he whispered. The human voice, "Commander Reed, he speaks again." "Put it through," the emperor growled. A blue shimmer filled the air, and Elias Reed's image materialized before him. Perfectly composed, hands clasped behind his back. "Your Majesty," he began with quiet grace. "Thank you for your attention. I know how precious your time is. You took 7 of ours. Allow us to return your generosity." The emperor bared his fangs. "Enough of your riddles." Reed tilted his head, almost pitying. "Not riddles. Accounting." He nodded slightly to someone off-screen. Across the galaxy, 7 Dominion planets, each the Emperor's personal fief, blinked out of existence. No sound, no explosion. Just light dimming. In the reflection of Reed's calm eyes, the destruction was almost beautiful. "We call this operation Grave Silence," he said softly. "For every scream you broadcast, we'll bury a world without a whisper." The feed cut. The Emperor staggered back, gripping his throne. The vizier's voice cracked. "How, Majesty? They have no fleet vast enough, no weapons that can." "They have patience," the Emperor spat. "That's their weapon." Beyond the palace walls, the people of Thrall Prime gathered in streets filled with smoke and rumors. They'd seen the transmissions, seen their sister worlds vanish, and a terrible truth was dawning. This was no longer a war of conquest, it was a purge. In orbit above them, invisible to scanners, the Terran flagship Hestia drifted like a phantom. Inside its dimly lit command deck, Reed watched the holographic render of the Emperor's planet rotating slowly before him. His officers stood silent. No cheers, no gloating. Only focus. Lieutenant Morrow broke the hush. "Orders, sir? Shall we strike the palace?" Reed shook his head. "Not yet. I want him to watch his empire fall one heartbeat at a time. That's how tyrants learn." The crew obeyed without question. Every face on that bridge bore a quiet rage, a grief too disciplined to look like anger. Outside, Hestia's weapon arrays unfolded. But instead of firing, they released thousands of black, dust-like drones that scattered into the upper atmosphere. They weren't bombs. They were eyes. "Phase 3, Reed said. "Activate the HIM." The communications officer hesitated. "Sir, are we sure?" Reed's voice softened. "They played our screams to their children. It's time they hear our silence." A low-frequency hum began to resonate across the system. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a heartbeat. Every Dominion communication channel, every ship, every broadcast frequency synced to it. 1 pulse per second. Soft. Relentless. A sound that grew until it filled every mind with the weight of something approaching. Back on Thrall Prime, the Emperor's generals gripped their heads, their translators glitching under the strain. The hum carried hidden human words. "We remember," over and over, 1,000 languages bent into one terrible chorus. The Emperor shouted to shut it down, but no console obeyed. His palace lights dimmed as the hum deepened, vibrating through marble and bone alike. Far above, Reed stared at the darkening planet. "That's enough," he said quietly. "Commence extraction for civilian zones. We're soldiers, not monsters." Morrow's brow furrowed. "We're evacuating them?" "Only the innocent," Reed said. "The guilty get a quieter fate." Dropships cloaked in static slipped through the clouds, scanning for lifeforms unarmed or unaligned with the regime. Civilians saw dark shapes descending and ran, expecting death, only to find calm voices guiding them toward beams of blue light. "Terran Humanitarian Protocol," a human pilot said through translation. "Please keep your children close." Many didn't understand the words, but they obeyed the tone, the gentleness. Reed watched the data flow, evacuation pods lifting thousands from burning cities. "Mark the coordinates," he ordered. "Once the last pod leaves, begin." Minutes later, the last shuttle vanished into orbit. Reed exhaled slowly. "Now." From Hestia's underbelly, 7 beams of pale light pierced the darkness. They weren't fire, they were absence, erasing matter at a molecular level. The Emperor's palace shimmered, then crumbled into dust so fine it glowed. In the city below, survivors saw the light rise upward, carrying with it a whisper they could almost hear. "We remember." Morrow looked away, voice rough. "It's done." Reed didn't answer immediately. His gaze was locked on the now silent capital, his expression unreadable. Finally he murmured, "Justice isn't vengeance. It's precision." The room fell quiet. Then the communications console blinked. A live transmission request from the Dominion's remaining war councils. The alien leaders appeared, trembling. Their faces reflected not defiance, but resignation. One of them, a serpent-like admiral, spoke first. Human, we surrender. End it. Please. Reed studied him. Surrender is a word you only learn after cruelty. You burned the word mercy when you broadcasted those executions. The Admiral's voice cracked. What do you want? Reed's tone softened into something terrible. To remember less. The channel cut before they could reply. Morrow turned slowly toward his commander. Sir, what happens now? Reed looked down at the console, where a single button pulsed. Now, we show them what restraint looks like. He pressed it. Across the Dominion, Terran fleets materialized above their remaining strongholds. Yet instead of firing, they released data pulses, encrypted, cascading through alien systems, shutting down weapons, disabling engines, freezing entire militaries in perfect stasis. Reed's voice echoed across the galactic frequencies once more, calm and clear. For the record, this isn't conquest. You'll rebuild. You'll live. You'll remember what you did, and what we didn't do. Billions heard him. Some cried, others knelt. The silence that followed was heavier than war. On the observation deck, Morrow whispered. You could have taken their empire. Reed nodded. Empires die on their own. All we had to do was teach them silence. He turned from the viewport. Prepare the return to Sol. Begin reconstruction assistance for liberated worlds. The war is over. As the Hestia drifted away, the void it left was almost reverent. The galaxy glimmered with strange calm. Systems disabled but untouched, armies disarmed but alive. For the first time in history, humanity had ended a war without colonizing a single inch. Yet Reed's eyes lingered on one last hologram. The Emperor's throne, floating in the ruins of his palace. On it, burned into the metal, a message had appeared. An old Terran phrase in human script. We started this in blood. We end it in silence. Reed stared at it for a long time, then whispered to himself. And silence, finally, remembers. Behind him, Hestia's engines roared to life. The stars stretched into lines as the ship entered slipspace, leaving the Dominion in its echoing stillness. But as the galaxy began to heal, one final transmission pulsed outward from Earth itself, soft, faint, reaching every species that had watched the executions and survived the reckoning. It contained no threats, no speeches, only coordinates and one quiet signature. Commander Elias Reed. United Terran Accord. End of Operation Grave Silence. And in that moment, across the vastness of space, a billion hearts realized the same truth. Humanity had never wanted war. They had only wanted peace so absolute, it frightened the stars themselves.